It was a bright, sunny morning when the young man arrived at one of the most exclusive private airline terminals in the city. He was not just any traveler. He was the son of a very successful black CEO, a man who had built a business empire from scratch and was widely respected in the corporate world. People knew the family as polite, professional, and successful, and his son, in particular, carried himself with a quiet confidence that drew attention wherever he went. Unlike many teenagers or young adults of his age, he had been raised to understand the value of respect, manners, and composure in every situation. Today he was heading to an important family event, and he had chosen to travel through this VIP terminal to ensure a smooth and private experience. The moment he stepped inside the terminal, he felt a sense of calm and sophistication that was different from regular airports. The lobby was immaculate, with shining marble floors and soft, modern lighting that gave the entire space an elegant glow. Staff members in crisp uniforms greeted passengers politely, and the air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and expensive perfumes. This was the kind of place where people came not just to travel, but to feel like they were being treated with a level of care that ordinary travelers could never imagine. He walked confidently, carrying a small leather bag, and found his way to the VIP seating area. The VIP section was a quiet oasis, separated from the hustle and bustle of the main terminal. Large, plush chairs were arranged in clusters, and every seat seemed to offer comfort beyond imagination. There were magazines neatly stacked, soft lighting, and a view of the runway where private jets gleamed under the morning sun. He chose a seat near the window so he could watch the planes take off while he waited for his boarding call. As he settled in, he felt a sense of relief. This was exactly the kind of peaceful moment he enjoyed before traveling, away from the noise, chaos, and crowds of regular airport terminals. He was not alone for long. The staff, trained to notice VIPs, immediately recognized him as someone important. One approached him with a polite smile and asked if he needed anything, a drink, a snack, or perhaps some assistance with his luggage. He thanked the staff and requested a coffee, appreciating the efficiency and courtesy with which everything was handled. It seemed like a perfect, normal day, one that started quietly and smoothly. He felt confident that nothing could disturb the calm of the morning. Despite the luxury and tranquility, there was an underlying tension in such spaces. VIP terminals were designed to cater to wealthy and influential clients, but that also meant that staff were often under pressure to meet certain expectations. These spaces were microcosms of privilege, where the rules were flexible depending on who was arriving or leaving. However, for him, this day began without a hint of trouble. He focused on checking his emails, responding to a few messages, and quietly enjoying the ambience of the terminal. Everything seemed ordinary, even special, in its own understated way. He looked around casually and observed the other passengers. Most were older professionals or high-profile individuals, quietly waiting or speaking softly on their phones. There was an unspoken understanding among everyone in the room that this was a space for calm, elegance, and discretion. For a moment he felt proud, not just of being there but of the life his family had built, the doors they could open, and the opportunities that came with being part of a successful household. He knew that this calm and privilege was not something everyone could experience, and that awareness made him appreciate the moment even more. As he sat back, sipping his coffee, he thought about the journey ahead. Traveling had always been an exciting experience for him, not because of the places he was going, but because of the small details along the way staff treated guests, the quiet hum of activity, and the feeling of being recognized and valued. This morning felt like one of those perfect moments when everything seemed under control. He had no reason to expect that anything unusual would happen. Yet, as he settled in, he couldn't have guessed that this ordinary, peaceful start would soon turn into an experience that would shock him, challenge his composure, and become a story that the world would soon talk about. Little did he know that the calm, sophisticated atmosphere of the VIP terminal was about to be disrupted by an unexpected arrival. What seemed like an ordinary day of smooth travel would soon become a headline-worthy event, testing not just the rules of privilege, but also the ethics and decisions of everyone around him. For now, though, he enjoyed the quiet, the luxury, and the anticipation of travel, completely unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. The morning continued peacefully, with the young man enjoying his coffee and the quiet luxury of the VIP lounge. The soft hum of conversation, the distant roar of private jets taking off, and the occasional polite greetings from staff created a sense of calm, almost like being in a different world compared to the busy commercial terminals most people experienced. He felt relaxed, confident, and completely unaware that the tranquility he was enjoying was about to be shattered. Suddenly, the automatic doors at the entrance slid open, and a well-dressed, high-profile passenger entered the lounge. It was immediately clear that this was someone of importance. He moved with an air of authority, exuding confidence and influence that seemed to demand attention from everyone around him. Staff members straightened instantly, their polite smiles now tinged with urgency. The young man observed the scene from his seat, sensing the subtle shift in the atmosphere. There was an invisible tension in the air, a change that only those familiar with VIP spaces could detect. Before he could fully comprehend what was happening, one of the staff members approached him. The smile that had greeted him earlier was replaced with a nervous, almost apologetic expression. The words that followed hit him like a thunderclap. "Sir, we need you to vacate your seat. A VIP passenger has arrived and we need this spot for them." For a moment he froze. His mind struggled to process what had just been said. Vacate his seat? After all, he had been there first. He had every right to sit comfortably while waiting for his flight. Yet, the staff insisted, repeating that it was required to accommodate the new passenger. He looked around, hoping to find some logic or reason that could explain the request, but all he saw were polite nods and hurried glances from other employees. He tried to stay calm, reminding himself to be composed. "I was here first," he said softly but firmly. "This is my seat. Why do I need to move?" His words were measured, respectful, but they carried the weight of disbelief and quiet anger. The staff member hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. It was evident that he was caught between following instructions and dealing with someone who had a legitimate complaint. The atmosphere in the lounge grew tense. Other passengers noticed the interaction, whispering among themselves, their curiosity piqued. The young man's sense of injustice began to grow. He had always been taught to respect authority, to remain polite in challenging situations, but this felt different. It wasn't just a request, it was a message that his presence could be easily dismissed in favor of someone else. He couldn't understand why, in a place meant for VIPs, the order of arrival and basic decency seemed irrelevant. Meanwhile, the VIP passenger had already noticed the commotion. He walked toward the staff with a confident, almost imperious stride, clearly expecting to be accommodated immediately. The staff, now visibly nervous, tried to manage the situation carefully, explaining that someone was already seated in the chair reserved for him. But the tone of urgency suggested that they were more concerned about keeping the VIP happy than ensuring fairness. The young man watched as the balance of power shifted dramatically. He was no longer in control of his experience. His rights and comfort were being sidelined in a way that stung deeply. In that moment, he realized that this was more than a simple request to move. It was a reflection of something larger, a subtle yet undeniable hierarchy that determined who deserved respect and who could be dismissed. He felt a surge of frustration, but he maintained his composure, standing firm while trying to understand what was happening. The staff, sensing his growing determination, became increasingly anxious. Their gestures were rushed, their explanations uneven. He looked around at the other passengers, some of whom were clearly sympathetic, others curious but hesitant to get involved. He understood that this wasn't just about a seat, it was about recognition, fairness, and respect. And as he prepared to respond, he knew that how he handled this situation would define not only the morning but also how the story would be remembered. The lounge, once calm and serene, was now the setting for a conflict that would soon escalate far beyond anyone's expectations, catching the attention of everyone present, and ultimately the world beyond those walls. The young man's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had been taught all his life that composure and dignity were the strongest tools in any difficult situation, and he reminded himself of that now. Yet, despite his efforts, the sharp sting of humiliation gnawed at him. He had been seated in that VIP chair moments ago, enjoying a peaceful start to his morning, and now he was being asked to give it up, not because of protocol, not because of necessity, but simply to accommodate someone else, someone who arrived later yet seemed entitled to priority. He looked at the staff again, trying to read their expressions. Their eyes darted nervously between him and the newly arrived passenger, betraying confusion and fear. They seemed torn, caught between following the demands of the VIP guest and confronting the uncomfortable reality of what they were asking him to do. One staff member stammered, "Sir, we really need you to," but he cut them off gently yet firmly with a voice that carried both authority and disbelief. "I don't understand. I was here first. This is my seat. Why should I move for someone else?" The words hung in the air like an invisible weight. A few nearby passengers began to watch closely, sensing that something unfair was unfolding. Whispers started circulating, low at first, but growing steadily louder as more people noticed the young man's frustration and the staff's hesitant obedience. It was clear to everyone present that this was not a typical seating request. It was a situation laden with tension, privilege, and discrimination. The VIP passenger, noticing the resistance, approached with a confident air, his presence almost intimidating. He did not raise his voice, but the subtle expectation that his desires must be met was evident in his posture, his calm yet commanding gestures, and the way he glanced at the staff. The young man sensed immediately that this encounter would not end without confrontation. He could feel the invisible power struggle unfolding around him. On one side, the authority and influence of the VIP guest. On the other, his own sense of dignity and rightful place. He rose from his seat, standing tall despite the flutter of anxiety in his chest. "I will not move without a proper explanation," he said, his voice steady, echoing slightly in the quiet lounge. His words caught the staff off guard. They exchanged hurried, panicked glances, unsure how to respond to a guest who refused to comply so firmly yet respectfully. The tension in the room was palpable. Even the other VIP passengers seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. For a moment, the young man felt the weight of isolation. He was outnumbered, the staff aligned with the demands of the arriving passenger, and yet he refused to back down. There was a strange sense of pride in standing his ground. It wasn't arrogance. It was an understanding that dignity mattered more than convenience. He had been raised to face challenges like this, to speak truth calmly even in the presence of powerful figures. And now he realized this was a moment that would test him far more than any classroom lesson or life advice ever could. The staff, now visibly uneasy, tried to explain again, fumbling over words and offering half-hearted apologies. "Sir, we just need to follow instructions," one muttered, clearly uncomfortable with what they were doing. Their hesitation only fueled the young man's resolve. He could see that the instructions were not about policy, they were about favoritism. The realization made him angrier, but he kept his composure, refusing to let his emotions turn into shouting or confrontation. Around him, the lounge had grown unusually silent. Even the sound of distant engines and soft background music seemed to fade into the tension of the moment. Other passengers observed quietly, some sympathetic, some curious, and a few clearly uncomfortable with the unfolding scene. He felt the invisible eyes on him and knew that this incident, small as it might seem, had the power to ripple beyond the lounge. Finally, he spoke again, calmly but with unmistakable firmness. "I am seated here for a reason. I deserve to finish my wait in peace. I expect the same courtesy I would offer to any guest." The words were simple yet powerful. They conveyed dignity, fairness, and a refusal to be dismissed. The staff hesitated once more, caught in the clash between authority and morality, unsure of how to proceed without creating a scene. And in that charged silence, the young man realized something crucial. This moment was no longer about a seat or a flight. It was about principles, respect, and the courage to stand up in the face of injustice. The conflict had begun and the outcome was uncertain. But one thing was clear. This incident would not be quietly forgotten. As the tension in the VIP lounge escalated, the young man remained calm, but the eyes around him told a story of growing curiosity and concern. One of the bystanders, a fellow traveler who had been quietly sipping coffee near the lounge's floor-to-ceiling windows, sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. He discreetly pulled out his phone, thinking he would simply capture a curious scene. What he didn't realize was that he was about to record a moment that would soon dominate social media, spark outrage, and ignite a worldwide conversation about privilege, fairness, and discrimination. The video began innocuously, showing the young man standing confidently in his seat, the staff nervously hovering around him, and the VIP passenger waiting nearby with an expectant, almost impatient posture. But it didn't take long for viewers to sense the imbalance. The young man's calm, respectful defiance contrasted sharply with the staff's rushed apologies and the VIP's subtle, unspoken sense of entitlement. Every frame seemed to tell a story that words alone could not. The discomfort of the employees, the invisible pressure of privilege, and the dignity of someone refusing to be dismissed unjustly. Within minutes, the bystanders shared the video on social media platforms. At first, it circulated quietly among friends and family, drawing comments of shock, sympathy, and disbelief. But the moment a prominent influencer reposted it, the clip went viral. People around the world began watching the short recording, and the reactions were immediate and intense. Comments flooded in, expressing outrage over the way the young man had been treated, admiration for his composure, and sharp criticism of the staff who had demanded he give up his seat. The video's caption simply read, "VIP Lounge Chaos, Black CEO's Son Expelled for White Passenger," but the content resonated far beyond the text. Viewers could feel the injustice, sense the tension, and recognize the unfairness that so many had experienced in different forms throughout their lives. It was relatable, shocking, and infuriating all at once. People from every corner of the globe began sharing the video, adding their own commentary, and debating what had happened. News outlets quickly picked up the story, amplifying its reach. Headlines appeared on online publications: young CEO's son forced out of VIP lounge seat, public outcry ensues, and privilege versus fairness. Social media erupts over airline incident. The incident, once a quiet altercation in a luxurious lounge, had transformed into a viral phenomenon, capturing the attention of millions who had never even been near a private airport terminal. The combination of dignity, discrimination, and the stark visual of an entitled VIP passenger created the perfect storm for public outrage. Meanwhile, the young man, still standing in the lounge, began to notice the whispers of those around him turning into murmurs about the video. He saw some passengers checking their phones, showing him the clip, and nodding in support. Although he had not sought attention, he realized that the story had taken on a life of its own. The humiliation he initially felt was now intertwined with a sense of responsibility. His calm response, his dignity under pressure, and his refusal to move unjustly had become a symbol for fairness and integrity. The staff, now fully aware of the viral potential, became increasingly flustered. Their earlier confidence had disappeared, replaced by panic. The reality of social media's reach had hit them. What might have seemed like a private instruction was now public evidence of favoritism and mistreatment. Every hesitation, every apology, and every awkward glance could now be seen, scrutinized, and criticized by thousands of viewers worldwide. As the minutes passed, the incident snowballed beyond anyone's control. Influencers, activists, and journalists began discussing the implications of the story, the unequal treatment of people based on race, the power dynamics in VIP spaces, and the courage it took to stand up quietly but firmly in the face of injustice. Hashtags began trending, and soon the young man's name and the lounge incident were being shared across multiple platforms. What had started as a moment of personal discomfort had become a symbol, a rallying point for fairness, respect, and accountability in spaces where privilege often dictated behavior. The young man, standing tall amidst the escalating chaos, felt a mix of emotions. He had not intended to become the center of a viral sensation, yet he understood the significance of the moment. The lounge was no longer just a space for luxury and comfort. It had become a stage for a global conversation about justice, dignity, and the responsibilities of those in positions of power. In the span of a few short minutes, an ordinary morning had transformed into a story that would not be forgotten, leaving everyone involved, from staff to VIP passengers, facing consequences they had never anticipated. As the video of the incident began to circulate online, the ripple effects reached far beyond the VIP lounge. Within minutes, the airline's corporate headquarters were alerted. Executives gathered in emergency meetings, their phones buzzing incessantly with notifications from social media, concerned clients, and press inquiries. What had begun as a quiet dispute in a single terminal was now a viral sensation, and the company's reputation, carefully cultivated over decades, was at stake. The CEO of the airline, a seasoned professional known for his decisive leadership, was immediately briefed on the situation. He watched the video himself, his face revealing a mix of disbelief and concern. The footage showed a young man, the son of a prominent CEO, standing his ground while staff appeared flustered and deferential to the arriving VIP passenger. It was clear that the incident was not just a minor misstep, it was a glaring public display of favoritism, poor judgment, and possibly discriminatory behavior. The corporate team knew that if left unaddressed, this moment could spiral into a crisis, tarnishing the brand and raising questions about the company's values. Executives quickly began piecing together the events. They contacted the lounge manager, who explained the sequence of actions in a nervous, halting voice. Staff members had indeed asked the young man to leave his seat in favor of the VIP passenger, believing it was the correct protocol under pressure from the guest. But as the video made it clear, this protocol was being questioned not only by viewers online but also by the young man himself, who had handled the situation with dignity and respect. The more the executives learned, the more serious the problem became. Within the hour, the airline released an internal directive demanding immediate accountability. Managers were instructed to identify every staff member involved, document their actions, and report back within minutes. The pressure was intense, and the corporate team understood that decisive action was necessary to prevent further damage. Meanwhile, social media continued to amplify the incident, with hashtags trending and news outlets publishing commentary about privilege, racial inequality, and ethics in customer service. The story was no longer just about a seat. It had become a symbol of fairness and accountability in the modern corporate world. The lounge manager was summoned to the corporate office and asked to provide a detailed report. Under the weight of scrutiny, he admitted that staff had acted under pressure but acknowledged that their decisions were misguided and reflected poorly on the company. He expressed regret but also explained that the employees had feared repercussions if they refused the VIP's demands. The executives recognized that fear had influenced poor judgment, but they were clear. Fear was not an excuse when ethics and equality were at stake. The airline's leadership convened a strategy meeting to determine the next steps. Public relations specialists, human resources heads, and senior management debated how to handle the incident. The consensus was clear. The company could not allow the narrative to continue unchecked, nor could it appear complicit in the discriminatory treatment. The young man's calm but firm stance had inadvertently forced the airline to confront its internal culture, and the leadership understood that swift, visible action was necessary to restore public trust. Minutes later, a formal decision was made. The staff directly involved in the incident would be suspended immediately pending further review. Internal communications were drafted to explain the company's position, emphasizing the airline's commitment to fairness, respect, and equality. Meanwhile, external communications were prepared for social media and press outlets, carefully crafted to acknowledge the incident, express regret, and outline corrective measures. The executives knew that any delay or misstep could make the situation worse, so they moved with urgency and precision. As the corporate wheels turned, the young man remained unaware of the internal storm. He had returned to his seat, still calm, still composed, but deeply aware that the incident had escalated far beyond the lounge. Little did he know the airline's leadership was now racing against time, balancing public perception, social responsibility, and the need to take action that would satisfy both the public and the principles at stake. What had begun as a seemingly small, personal conflict had now reached the highest levels of corporate decision-making, setting the stage for a dramatic outcome that would leave everyone involved, staff, passengers, and executives, facing the consequences of their choices. The atmosphere in the airline's corporate office was tense and electric. The executives had spent the past hour reviewing the video, cross-checking reports from the lounge manager, and debating the proper course of action. Every second mattered. The young man's dignity and the viral footage had already triggered a massive public reaction, and the company knew that any hesitation or misstep could escalate the situation beyond repair. The decision had been made. The staff involved in the incident would face the consequences immediately. Meanwhile, back at the VIP lounge, the staff sensed the growing storm. The once confident employees were now pale and jittery, exchanging nervous glances as their phones buzzed with notifications of the viral video. Whispers filled the lounge as other passengers realized that the incident had captured the world's attention. The young man, sitting calmly in his seat, observed the subtle panic but remained composed. He had long learned that patience and dignity were more powerful than anger or confrontation. Then a manager approached the staff with a stern expression. The words were direct, leaving no room for negotiation. The employees were being terminated immediately. Shock rippled through the group. For some, it felt surreal. They had followed instructions from higher-ups, yet now they were being held accountable in the harshest way. The realization that their livelihoods were gone within minutes was jarring. Their mouths opened to protest, but the manager's unwavering gaze silenced them. This was not a moment for debate. It was a moment of accountability. The news of the firings quickly reached the young man, who remained seated, quietly observing. He did not feel vindictive or triumphant, only a deep sense that justice, however delayed, had begun to take shape. Around him, passengers whispered and murmured, recognizing the gravity of the action. Some nodded subtly in approval, while others simply watched, awed by how quickly a small incident had escalated and now impacted real lives. Outside the lounge, the corporate office issued a public statement confirming the staff terminations. The company emphasized that they were committed to fairness, equality, and accountability, acknowledging that the actions of a few employees had violated these principles. The statement was carefully worded to protect the company's reputation while sending a clear message. Discriminatory behavior, favoritism, and unethical decisions would not be tolerated, no matter the circumstances. For the staff, the aftermath was immediate and personal. Phones rang incessantly with calls from family, friends, and colleagues, all reacting to the viral footage and the shocking news of their termination. Social media posts debated the fairness of the firings, with some defending the employees and others condemning them. Every notification was a reminder of the consequences of their actions and the scrutiny of a world that now watched every detail. Meanwhile, the young man remained composed, reflecting on the power of dignity, patience, and standing up for what was right. He understood that the incident was larger than a seat in a VIP lounge. It was about fairness, ethics, and the importance of treating every individual with respect, regardless of status or background. The staff firings, while severe, were a tangible reminder that actions have consequences, and that the world was watching more closely than anyone could have imagined. As the day unfolded, the story of the incident, the viral video, and the staff firings dominated news outlets and social media platforms. Experts weighed in on corporate ethics, racial bias, and the responsibilities of employees in high-pressure situations. The airline's decisive action was widely discussed, praised by some for its swiftness and criticized by others for the severity of the punishment. Yet, one thing was undeniable. The incident had sparked a conversation that extended far beyond the VIP lounge, highlighting the importance of accountability in both personal and professional spaces. In the end, the young man quietly departed from the lounge, leaving behind a scene that had become a defining moment for everyone involved. He had not sought attention, and he had not acted out of anger, yet his composure had triggered consequences that reshaped the morning for an entire team of employees. The incident was no longer just a story about a seat. It was a story about justice, dignity, and the power of standing firm in the face of unfairness. As news of the incident spread, it seemed as if the entire world had tuned in. Social media platforms were flooded with clips, screenshots, and commentary from people around the globe. The story of a young black CEO's son being expelled from a VIP seat, and the swift firing of the airline staff, captured widespread attention in a way few could have anticipated. Within hours, the incident had transcended a single lounge, becoming a symbol of fairness, privilege, and accountability. News outlets, both local and international, raced to cover the unfolding drama. Headlines appeared across websites and television screens: VIP lounge controversy, black CEO's son expelled for white passenger, airline fires staff over discriminatory treatment in VIP lounge, viral video sparks outrage over privilege and ethics. Journalists analyzed the footage frame by frame, dissecting the reactions of the young man, the staff, and the VIP passenger. Experts were brought in to discuss corporate responsibility, social justice, and the subtle dynamics of privilege and discrimination. Public reaction was explosive and multifaceted. Millions of people commented, shared, and debated the incident. Some praised the young man for his composure and dignity, admiring the way he handled the situation with calm authority. "This is how you stand up for yourself with grace," wrote one commenter. Others expressed outrage over the initial treatment he received, denouncing the staff's actions as unethical and discriminatory. "Unbelievable," another comment read. "No one should ever be treated this way, no matter where they sit." The airline found itself under intense scrutiny. While many applauded the rapid firing of the staff, others questioned whether the punishment was too harsh. Editorials and opinion pieces debated the delicate balance between enforcing ethics and maintaining employee morale. Analysts discussed how VIP culture often pressures employees to make morally questionable decisions, and how corporations must train staff to resist such pressures without fear of retribution. The incident sparked conversations about systemic issues in corporate environments and the ways in which privilege can distort fairness. Meanwhile, advocacy groups and social justice organizations amplified the story further. They highlighted how the event reflected broader societal challenges, from racial bias to inequities in treatment based on status. They called for companies across industries to examine their internal policies, ensure fair treatment for all clients, and implement proper training to prevent similar incidents. The young man's calm, principled stance became a case study in both ethics and courage, inspiring countless posts, articles, and discussion threads. Television networks and podcasts featured interviews with workplace experts, ethicists, and commentators, dissecting the incident from multiple angles. They debated not only what had happened in the lounge, but why it happened, and how such situations could be prevented in the future. Social media polls asked viewers, was the airline's response justified? And who is at fault, the staff or the VIP culture? Engagement surged, with tens of thousands participating, sharing opinions, and analyzing every detail of the viral footage. The story even reached corporate boardrooms outside the airline. Executives in other industries used it as a teaching moment, discussing how privilege and power dynamics influence employee behavior and decision-making. Training programs were updated to include scenarios like this one, emphasizing the importance of ethical choices and fairness, even under pressure. What had started as a tense moment in a VIP lounge became a global lesson in dignity, justice, and corporate responsibility. Through it all, the young man remained largely in the background of the media frenzy. Interviews, commentary, and articles referred to him, but his focus was not on fame or attention. It was on the principle of the matter. Yet, the public and media narrative framed him as the central figure, a symbol of composure in the face of injustice. The incident had sparked a worldwide conversation that reached beyond social media, news outlets, and corporate offices. It had become a reference point for discussions about ethics, race, privilege, and accountability. By the end of the week, the story had become part of cultural conversation. Hashtags related to the incident trended, media outlets ran follow-ups, and people everywhere debated the lessons it offered. What started as a personal moment of injustice in a quiet VIP lounge had escalated into a global discourse on fairness, dignity, and responsibility. The lounge itself, the staff, the airline, and the young man's calm resistance had all become symbols of a much larger conversation about how society balances privilege, ethics, and respect for every individual. By the time the incident had fully unfolded, it had left a mark far larger than anyone in the VIP lounge could have imagined. What began as a seemingly minor altercation over a seat had escalated into a global conversation about fairness, dignity, and accountability. For the young man, the experience was both challenging and illuminating. Sitting back and reflecting, he understood that the events of that day were not just about him, the staff, or even the airline. They were a reflection of deeper societal dynamics that affect countless people every day. The first lesson was clear. Dignity and composure matter more than immediate satisfaction or confrontation. The young man had faced an unexpected, unfair situation, yet he handled it calmly, respectfully, and firmly. His measured response had not only preserved his self-respect but had also forced others, the staff, the VIP passenger, and ultimately the airline's corporate leadership, to confront their own actions and decisions. It showed that courage does not always roar. Sometimes it is quiet, persistent, and principled. The second lesson emerged for corporations and institutions. The airline's swift response to fire the staff involved revealed how accountability can operate when policies and ethics are prioritized. But it also highlighted the importance of proper training and support for employees who work under pressure, especially in environments where privilege and hierarchy can influence behavior. Many companies worldwide took note, revisiting their own protocols, training programs, and workplace culture, realizing that fairness and ethics could no longer be treated as optional or secondary. The incident also sparked broader societal reflection. Viewers, commentators, and social justice advocates analyzed the power dynamics at play, how subtle biases and assumptions influence behavior, and how privilege can be wielded in ways that disadvantage others. People began to question not only the treatment of the young man but also the systems that allowed such treatment to occur in the first place. The viral story became a symbol of how ordinary actions, like asking someone to vacate a seat, can have extraordinary consequences when fairness and equality are compromised. For the staff who were fired, the lesson was harsh but unmistakable. Actions have consequences, and moral courage is sometimes required even in situations where fear or pressure might tempt someone to act differently. The firings served as a reminder that ethical behavior cannot be overridden by convenience, authority, or external demands. Decisions made in the moment, especially under pressure, can have lasting repercussions, shaping careers and reputations. The public response reinforced the importance of accountability and awareness. Millions of people around the world debated, discussed, and reflected on the incident. It reminded society that fairness, respect, and equality are not abstract concepts. They are lived experiences that affect real people every day. The story encouraged individuals to stand up for themselves and others when confronted with injustice, to question norms, and to insist on ethical treatment regardless of status, race, or wealth. Finally, the young man's experience became a personal guide for navigating challenges in life. He learned that even in moments of unfairness or public scrutiny, maintaining integrity and composure can create change far beyond one's immediate environment. He understood that courage is not always about confrontation but about standing firm for what is right, even quietly, and allowing actions to speak louder than words. In the end, the incident left a lasting impact on everyone involved: the young man, the airline, the staff, and even the public. It became more than a viral story. It became a lesson in ethics, fairness, and the power of human dignity. Companies revisited policies, employees reconsidered their responsibilities, and the world witnessed how a single calm stand against injustice could spark meaningful reflection and dialogue. This story, once a moment in a VIP lounge, ultimately became a symbol of hope, courage, and accountability. It reminded society that fairness must be upheld everywhere, from boardrooms to airport lounges, and that standing up for what is right, no matter the pressure, can inspire change on a much larger scale.